Hello, Jamie from Inky&Scrappy, back with Ink Road stamps and Inked Jamie. Yes, that would be me, Inked Jamie. So the Inked Girl subscription for July 2024 was me. So if you want an Inked Girl named after you, you have to be super active in the Ink Road stamps Inked Roadies group on Facebook. It was a lot of commenting. That's all I'm going to say. So back to my card. So to start with, I stamped it on some translucent Yupo with Staz-on ink, and then just some Xpress cardstock with regular alcohol marker friendly ink. So I used Hero's Intense Black ink for this one. So for Yupo is a craft plastic. It's not really paper. It doesn't act like paper, and it's, you know, it's made to play with alcohol inks. Not so much, I mean, you know, alcohol markers obviously are going to work on it, but they're going to sit on top. They don't actually absorb into the paper, so keep that in mind. They do give you less of a blend look, more streaky or blotchy. You're going to see your brush strokes, I think, is the best way to explain it. It's not, I don't know. It's just not the same as when you're blending on Xpress style cardstock. It's, you know, it's going to move the ink around more. You're going to, you know, it's kind of like watercoloring. You know, you're going to, whenever you touch that watercolor, it's going to move with the water. You know what I mean? So it's kind of the same theory. If you touch it with your alcohol marker, you're going to reactivate that alcohol marker. It's not going to stay put. I hope that makes sense. I don't know if it does or not. Anyways, so I did bring in a blue for like the top of my flames. I just did a red and a yellow. I do have a color map for this one. I will have it on my blog, on my Ohuhu color blend tab on the right hand side on like your laptop or desktop version. And I think it's a drop down menu on mobile. So for this one, I wanted to bring in Pear Blossom's Press Twinkling Lights. I usually make my own circuits. I do not know how to make a circuit that has the twinkling effect. I'm sure it's just a matter of, you know, doing some soldering and the like, and that's just not my, I'm just not versed in that yet. Anyways, so I got them from Pear Blossom Press, and I thought this would be a fun one to give that twinkling fire flickery glow. I did end up coloring it on the front side. It did okay with the Staz-on. Granted, it had dried for a good 20, you know, it had dried fairly well. I did just make sure to scribble out my markers off to the side to make sure that they weren't going to, you know, have any leftover Staz-on ink on them. I didn't want to contaminate them. So there is the actual color palette that I used for my coloring. So for this one, I did come in with some teals and some purples, kind of kept it simple. But I also wanted to add the glow of the flame. So I brought in my yellow tone and kind of did my highlights in yellow before I got too far. And it kind of helped guide me with where my highlights were going to be a little bit more and where my shadows, you know, all the things. So I did go over them with the lightest tone in the marker to kind of blend it in because I didn't want it to be a stark yellow. I just kind of wanted it to have a yellow glow to it. So the same with this one, and then of course I'm going to come in with some more of that yellow on the other parts that I wanted some yellow glow to. So keep in mind when you're, you know, the yellow is going to dry before you get there, but I think I kind of kept it, I didn't want to overdo the yellow until I was ready to work on those areas. I did add it to the top of my rocks right away because otherwise I definitely would have forgotten. And being I was going in with gray there, I wasn't too worried about it. I did add some stippling or some speckles on to my hat to kind of give it that knit feel. Just adding texture with dots works really well. Try to keep where either kind of where your low lights are, adding in some of those darker, it doesn't have to be the darkest marker. You can go with your mid-tone and do that, but you know, you're going to layer ink on top of ink. I hope that makes sense. And then I did add a little bit of a flame to my marshmallow. If you know me, I like burnt sugar. It's the best. I like to start my marshmallows on fire. It's the only way to go. Yeah, I know. You can come at me. It's alright. I try sometimes not to. It just always tends to start on fire. It's like my life. A hot mess. Alright, so I'm going to come in with my dark gray and then my mid-tone or my lighter gray on this one. I don't know if I left the grays on my color chart. I think I used yellow grays on this one. Don't quote me. I did this one a couple of weeks ago. Anyways, so there is, so everything's colored. I cut it out using my brother's Scan and Cut. I am taking kind of that outline piece and just kind of giving myself a guide on my actual panel front. I want to make it where the lights are behind the fire. And so to do that, I kind of need to cut out that shape from my panel. So to do this, the best way that I can say, so back when I started stamping, when I was like, I don't know, 10, 8, I don't know. You used to come in with a marker, like I think it was a Marby marker, and you would color on your stamp, and then you'd huff on it like hot air, hot wet air, and then you would stamp it. So you would get the color that you wanted the image to be. And so I kind of did, did kind of the same thing. I took out my super cheap water-based markers. I have these in my stash for when my nephews and niece want to color at my house, because Aunt Jamie has all the things, right? So I just brought in that, kind of did just the fire, and then I'm coming in with my erasable pen here just because I want my brother's Scan and Cut to cut it out, and the lines were kind of light, and so I wanted it to actually be able to register them. And so I did go over them, made sure that you could see them good, and then I will bring that over to my brother's Scan and Cut. Yes, I left this in real time. So I load my mat, I tape down. So on this one, I put some tape on the back of it, like just tape runner, and then I did one piece on the top so it didn't get caught on that bar that goes. I scanned it in, so going through your selections, and then I'm just going to bring this down to kind of box in that flame a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect here. I just want it to kind of recognize that area and not the rest of it. So it recognized the area that I wanted. I did do a 0.04 border on it, so it's going to cut that 0.04 border around my image. I probably could have cut it right on the line, but this gives me just that little bit of wiggle room, and so all I'm going to do is push the cut button and hope for the best. That's me with my fingers crossed. So I usually stand and watch it. I usually color all my images before I do it and go there. Yeah, it is what it is. So here it is. It's cutting it, and we're hoping for the best. So this one does have a couple of those little itty bitty pieces. I don't know if they necessarily cut out the greatest. They did cut out somewhat. So it did pop out. You can see here. So it kind of, they were really little pieces. So I did just kind of poke those through, and then I could just peel this up off of my mat. And I got my see-through panel without a whole lot of extra. I don't like to do the X-Acto knife. Can I say I don't want to say I'm lazy. I just really don't like doing the X-Acto knife. I'm not great with it. So I'm bringing in Inked Kylie for this one. I just wanted those stars on this one because, night sky. So I'm bringing in some VersaMark ink, I guess. It's embossing ink for the most part. I'm going to bring in my top piece here just to kind of give me a line. I probably should have possibly brought in some masking paper there, but, yeah. I was just free handing it today. Yeah. And then actually bringing in white embossing powder. I'm using Brutus Monroe's Alabaster White embossing powder for this one. I kind of went back and forth between if I wanted to do clear or white, and I decided white was going to be a little bit more, once you buff it, it definitely stays white, and so that's why I ended up going with white on this one. I wanted to make sure those stars were going to keep that white feel. So of course, once they're all heat set, you can't really see them a whole lot until you start inking. So for this one, I'm bringing in some, I brought in a yellow. I don't remember what yellow it was. Good questions. I'm not, I think it is Scattered Straw. And then for my blue here, or my purple, I'm bringing in Villainous Potion. It's that deep dark purple. I did do the yellow right around the fire because I figured it would have some glow to it. I was fine with it being, I wanted the glow down below as well. So, you know, the rocks are going to have that yellow glow on it. So I kind of wanted a little bit of glow on my dirt. So I didn't mask it right away. And then, of course, I'm just going to come in with my blending brushes here and blend that out a little bit more. So then I'm just going to switch my blending masking paper over. Now keep in mind my inks are still wet, so my masking paper is not going to stick down very good. I am really good about doing it this way because I'm not very patient, and so I just learn that I need to kind of hold that masking paper on towards the bottom. I did come in with some Black Soot Distress Oxide ink around the edges there to kind of make it a little bit darker. And then I'm going to come in with that yellow again and just kind of add a little bit more highlight to that area. I think my brown was Scorched Timber. Is that what that was called? It's the new one. I don't. Names fail me sometimes. I'm sorry. So I'm going to buff off my stars there. So my red was just lightly wet, or it had been misted, and so it just buffs off fairly easy without reacting to the background. You don't want your red to be soaking wet. I did bring in some sparkly water, so that's using that Winsor & Newton watercolor iridescent medium, which has the mica sparkly specklies in it. And then of course I did suck it up, I guess, or I don't know. I think that's how we want to say it, right? I sucked up the water to kind of give it a lighter appearance. So it gives more, I guess, depth to your stars. Like maybe behind them there's some more. Or maybe they're just the little glow bugs. I don't know. It was all good. I did come in with my purple blending brush around my smoke on my cut image here, just because I didn't want it to be, I don't know, I didn't want that stark white look to it. So once I have it kind of cut, I'm going to lay it on where I want it, flip it over, kind of trace where my cut lines are from the Brother Scan and Cut, and this way I can place this piece there. It's not going to block my fire at all. And I'm going to do the same thing with my rocks here. I'm going to cut out the actual fire on the line. And then I did bring in that dark brown blending brush to kind of add a little bit of color to the bottom there, so it's not that stark white on the rocks. Now, I did leave my girl stark white all the way around. I was fine with that. I kind of wanted the fire to be, I wanted the lights behind the fire to kind of stick out a little bit more, and I thought that the white was taking away from that on the fire. I don't know. I hope that makes sense. It did in my head. It's all good. So I'm bringing in some, I don't know, foam tape. There we go. I can't find words today. It's hard. Can I say it's Monday? And I did this one like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it is what it is. So I'm going to put on my foam squares. I'm pretty sure these were picked up at the Dollar Tree. $1.25 tree. They're really not $1 anymore. Anyways, pop up my little Jamie girl there, and then I'm going to trim this down just a little bit. I kind of want to, I wasn't perfect on my stamp lining up, and so I kind of wanted the girl and the fire to be a little bit more centered. So I'm just going to trim a quarter inch off on two sides there to kind of center her up a little bit better. Now for my fire, I'm not necessarily worried about it being cut perfectly, right? I just need to cut around it so it's going to stick behind my cut opening here. So once I have this in, I'm going to flip it over and then I'm going to kind of line it up. It was just easier to lay it on my tabletop and then pick it up from there, just kind of lining it up and touching it from there. It worked really well that way. Now for my little twinkle lights, I'm kind of trying to stagger them a little bit. I'm just bringing in some Scotch tape here to hold them down. Washi would work as long as you don't cover where they're kind of going. You won't have any issues with when they light up seeing whatever you use to hold them down with. And then for this one, I'm just trying to figure out where I want my button to be. So I'm going to kind of play with this a little bit more. I wasn't happy with the placement on the one, so I'm going to reassess and kind of readjust a little bit, making sure that I was happy with where they were placed. I think they kind of like bunched all together, and so I wanted them one higher, one lower, you know, it was all good. So I did come in with a little bit more tape to make sure they were going to stay where I wanted them to be. And then once I was happy with that, I needed to figure out where I was going with that button again. So once I was happy with my placement on both of them, I'm just going to come in with my super thick foam tape. So I picked this up on Amazon. It's probably the 3mm thickness. So it's like laying your foam tape on top of your foam tape and getting a second thickness. It's just a nice thick one, and then it's wide too, so it doesn't take as much. I don't know if it is acid free. It's probably outside foam tape. I really don't know. It's super sticky though, so there's that. I don't worry about my cards being acid free at this point because I don't expect that they'll last forever. You know, they're not as important as like your scrapbook page. Anyways, so I will trim that down and kind of fill that in, covering up. I mean, you can cover up the wires, it's fine. So this will complete the, you know, the background of my card, or the back of my card. So I have those twinkling lights on there. I know where my button is going to be. I need to figure out my sentiment, my background panel here for, you know, that extra 1/4 inch all the way around. So for this one, I'm bringing back in that VersaMark, and then I'm going to heat set this with some white embossing powder. So sometimes you just need to watch something burn. It's usually my marshmallow, just saying. And then I'll heat set that, and then I'm going to run this through my die cut machine with an Ink Road Stamp Sentiment die cut. So I usually just modify my dies to what I want. So you see, I kind of didn't want it to be as long as it was, so I will run it through partway, and then I will shift it and run it through the other way, so it gives me a smaller sentiment strip, and I still have that stitching all the way around. So I cheated and used what I was planning on using for my background panel here as for my sentiment strip. That's why I stamped it in the middle. Should I say it saves paper, but it, you know, nobody's going to see that middle part anyway. So this way I got to save a little bit of paper, and it coordinates perfectly with that background piece. I do this a lot. I don't always show it, but I do that a lot. So I'm going to line this up here. Make sure I have a, you know, hopefully mostly lined up all the way around. So I'm just kind of putting a mark where I want my little push button to be, or where it falls. So I'm going to glue on my sentiment down on the bottom here. I thought about putting it on top, but I kind of like it at the bottom here. And then for my push button, I had to think about what I wanted to do. So for my actual push button, I decided to stamp out part of the rocks that go around the fire and just colored it to match the ones that are on around the actual fire, and then I just wrote push on it with a jelly glaze pen, making sure not to actually push on the word push until it was all the way dry. You know, I tend to smudge up things. Yeah, it happens. So once I had that done, I think I should have put it in white, but I did it in black. Anyways, once I had that done, finishing up the inside, stamping, of course, Ink Jamie on there, and then, of course, I pulled out Roadies 39. Check out the search function on Ink Road Stamps website. I just put in burn, and it popped up anything that had the word burn in it, stamp set wise, and so this one popped up, and I was like, this is perfect. Of course, my husband was sitting behind me, and I'm like, are you okay with that one? He's like, it's very you. Yeah. Just because I'm smiling doesn't mean I like you. I might be picturing you on fire. It worked perfectly for this one. Yeah. I don't know if this one was under burn or fire. It could have been. I put in both of them, but I thought this one popped up with burn. Anyways, yes. So I liked how the inside tied into the outside. Definitely some snark and some sass on this one. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and please keep getting inky. Go check out Ink Road Stamps, and you know, those twinkling lights from Pear Blossom Plus are pretty cool behind that fire. So have a great one. Bye!